Women's Appreciation is a pretty great episode of The Office. This is the 21st episode of the 3rd season. It's directed by Tucker Gates, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And when I read the title, I was a little bit nervous because anything to do with women is sometimes really awkward and uncomfortable as far as Michael is concerned. And while there were definitely a few awkward moments, it wasn't actually that bad. Starts off with Jim coming into the office and Dwight gives him a demerit. He turns it around and tells him he'll get a full disadulation. Not a bad way to start things off. I do love Jim and Dwight banter. The main narrative focuses on the fact that Phyllis came in from the car park and she'd been flashed. And needless to say, she's quite disturbed by this. Michael laughed, which is honestly kind of the reaction I expected from him. And Dwight decides to form an emergency anti-flashing task force. And he delegates tasks and he refers to Phyllis as phallus, which is a terrible joke, but I rather liked it. I actually didn't pick up on it, which is, I don't know what that says, but he called her phallus and I only realised once Pam pointed it out. And then Pam is talking to the camera, she's talking about Jim's penis, and it was an interesting couple of minutes. And the women just want respect, but Dwight is handing out notices saying that they have to start dressing conservatively, basically blaming them for the flasher. Not that Phyllis dresses particularly provocatively, but needless to say, this is not a solution to the problem. And everybody is gathered in the conference room, and Michael mentioned that Meredith flashed him, and I completely forgot that she flashed him at the Christmas party. And it just kind of made me think, Michael didn't make a big deal out of that. Is it, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but is it worse to be flashed a penis than it is breasts? I mean, one could argue yes. I think I'd probably lean more towards yes, especially since, for example, a woman could breastfeed, so there are situations when having a breast out in public is acceptable. Whereas I can't really think of any situation when having a penis out in public would be acceptable. I mean, if you're peeing, I guess. There are some public open urinals, so I guess in those situations, but anything else, probably not. But it was an interesting moment because I had completely forgotten that, and they've handled the two situations very, very differently. And if anybody has any thoughts on that, I'd be very keen to hear what you have to say. Also, I loved Angela's sweater. This is just the point at which I noticed it and wrote it down. It's black and it's got cats on it, and I googled it, and it's actually a sweater from a brand called Coldwater Creek. It's rather sweet. We then find out that it's actually Jim and Karen's 6-month anniversary. I don't know whether it feels longer than that or if that feels about right. I'm not really sure, but we find out that Rainn had also emailed Karen at one point to ask her out on a date. So I don't know what Rainn thinks of his relationship with Kelly, but he's clearly asking other women out, so that's a little bit awkward. And meanwhile, Michael's taken all of the women shopping to the shopping mall, and it's actually a really lovely scene. They're all sitting around this table, and Michael starts to open up, and they're supporting him with these problems he's having with Jan, and they make a list, or he makes a list of pros and cons, and one of the cons is he says, I'm unhappy when I'm with her. Needless to say, that should be a very, very big con. And what's quite interesting about this is Karen at that moment said every relationship has rough patches, very much indicating that there are rough patches with her relationship with Jim. And Pam responds that Michael, by saying that, it sounds like they're just wrong for each other. And I think that was meant for Karen and Jim. I've said it before. I don't think Jim and Karen are meant to be together. Jim is fun-loving. He has a silly sense of humour. Karen is very straight-laced. And I don't think they're right for each other. Not that opposites can't attract, but I don't think they're good for each other, even taking Pam out of the equation. And I definitely think that while those lines were directed at Michael and Jan's relationship, they were definitely about Jim and Karen, and I will refuse to believe anything else. And Michael is so thankful for the support that they showed him that he decides to buy them all one thing from Victoria's Secret, which was a bit of an odd scene. And we have an awkward moment between Michael and Angela. Angela is very uncomfortable. And then on the way back to the office, the car breaks down. Pam changes the tyre while Michael's getting in the way. And I like the fact that they're making it very obvious that they're not conforming to strict gender rules. Michael was the one who needed emotional support with his relationship, whereas stereotypically, that's a woman thing. Pam changed the tyre. Stereotypically, that's a man thing. And I love the fact that they're making it very obvious that they're not conforming to these potentially damaging gender stereotypes. And I rather enjoyed that quite a lot. And the end of the episode, it's a bit weird because Michael's phoning Jan to break up with her, and Pam, Karen, and Phyllis are just kind of watching him. Like a bird's watching a baby bird. I don't know why that image came into my head. That's just what it reminded me of parent bird looking into the nest. And it's a bit peculiar. I guess they're supporting him, but he has to leave a voicemail. And at that moment, Jan walks into the room. And she didn't hear what he was saying. Or if she did, she certainly didn't think it was about her. The others leave. It's just Jan and Michael. And Jan has actually come to apologise for a conversation they had earlier. She didn't like how it went. And then she gets a notification on her phone. And, of course, it's the voicemail. And she listens to it. And she hears Michael breaking up with her. And it was an interesting way for us to get Jan's reaction. I thought that worked quite well. And I have to say, I'm kind of pleased. I don't like Jan. I don't like her. I mean, I don't mind what she brings to the show, but I don't really care for her as a character, and I feel like this whole thing with Michael has been dragging on way longer than I'd like it to. I have no idea what happens next. Maybe they get back together. I have no idea. But certainly I don't love her as a character. Oh, well, no, that's not true. I prefer it when she's not happy with Michael. I prefer it when Michael's trying to kiss up to her and she's not accepting it. I just preferred that dynamic. I didn't really like where it went over the last few episodes, or I guess the bulk of this season, but I'm curious to see what will happen next. And at the very, very end, Dwight goes into the bathroom and realises he's been tricked and shouts at Pam, or shouts for Pam, I guess, and I don't know, I didn't like that ending. I didn't really like the way it went. I thought it was a bit of a flat ending, so I didn't love the last few seconds. But it didn't affect my overall enjoyment. Personal highlights. I think the reading between the lines with Karen and Jim's relationship, I rather like that. At least that's my reading of it. They're having problems. It's not the first time we've had this suggestion that they're having a bit of a rough patch, and Pam pointing out that they're not right for each other. Maybe that planted the seed for Karen. I would like it for Karen to break up with Jim. I don't want Jim to break up with Karen, because then Karen will always be thinking, he broke up with me just so he could be with Pam. Whereas if Karen breaks up with him, there's no guilt for Jim to then at some point get with Pam. So I hope Karen breaks up with Jim. I hope it happens within the next, I think there are 2 episodes left of this season. But as I've mentioned many times, every time I make a prediction with The Office, I'm always wrong. So it's probably not going to happen. But that's what I would like, because I don't want Karen to be cast aside. I don't want her to be brushed out of the way. I quite like her as a character. I don't like her with Jim, but I have grown to like her as an individual, and I'd like her to stick around. But I don't want her to feel like she's being rejected in favour of Pam. So that's what I hope, and we'll see if that happens going forward. Other personal highlights, everybody supporting Michael, Pam changing the car tyre, just the way that all went, very, very smooth. And well, I guess I want to say Michael breaking up with Jan, but I am curious about the aftermath. We'll see. But for now, I'm pleased to say that Woman's Appreciation is a pretty brilliant episode of The Office, and definitely one that I really thoroughly enjoyed.